Greetings to our viewers. Thank you for joining us for the latest edition of the Asia Review, where we provide you with a succinct guide to the biggest headlines from around the region. We are joined, as usual, by Mr. Duncan Bartlett, Indo-Pacific Editor at the Kootneeti. Duncan, welcome and thank you for offering to preview the events this week. Let's start with a bit unconventional discussion, the South Korean drama Squid Game, which has become the world's #1 most viewed and most streamed online web series. It's a violent show in which people battle for their lives and through various games, and it focuses on debt-ridden people who are competing to win a huge cash prize. So what do you think it says about the South Korean society and why there's a portrayal of such a thing through a drama?
Well, the first thing to say about Squid Game is what a remarkable success it is for the South Korean entertainment industry. It's popular in India. It's the #1 show in Netflix in the United States. It's popular in Europe, including here in the UK. And amazingly, it's actually popular in Japan as well. But what kind of picture do we get of South Korea as a result of watching Squid Game? I would say, ironically, it's a pretty dark and negative image of the country that comes through. Now, of course, Squid Game is fiction, but what we see with these violent competitions, I think, is a reflection of the concerns within South Korea about two things in particular. One is the very, very high price of housing, which means that a lot of people are kind of excluded from the housing market. They feel as though they're at the bottom of a very strict class system, and it would only be by some miracle that they were able to rise up the rungs. In the game, of course, if they win the money, they go to the top, but if they lose, they potentially die. The other thing is corruption. Handing out money. This has been a systemic problem in South Korea. Various presidents and politicians have said that they want to resolve this problem, but corruption scandals are an aspect of South Korean society which continue. There'll be an election, by the way, in South Korea in March next year, and the two main parties are just selecting their candidates. South Korea's politicians are generally quite populist. They say that they'll stand up for the will of the people against the entrenched establishment. We'll have to see what happens when a new president comes into power in the spring of 2022.
Let's move to China, and there has been certain media reports that China has launched a hypersonic missile that orbits the Earth at a remarkable speed. Sources say that the weapon is designed to dodge missile defenses, and it was apparently carried into the orbit by a rocket before circling the world and crashing down on a target. So what do you make of these reports?
Well, these media reports are saying that China has effectively won the race to produce this kind of hypersonic missile. In theory, if it can fly around the world at these incredible speeds and not be spotted by radar, it is potentially an extremely powerful weapon, which could, if there was a conflict between China and the United States, for example, strike any target in America, including Washington or New York, if this is actually the case. Now, China says it wasn't a hypersonic missile, it was part of a space program, it's been misunderstood. So I think there's a bit of a propaganda war going on here between the American sources which are feeding the media and then the Chinese which are denying it. I wouldn't necessarily take the Chinese denials as being categorical, by the way. It may well be that this hypersonic missile has been tested. And we know that China is spending more and more money on its defense program. It says, though, it's very much a defense program. It's to defend China in the event of an attack. It's not to take aggressive action against any other country.
There has been news of severe floods in the Indian state of Kerela, and heavy rains have caused rivers to overflow, cutting off towns and villages. And there are fears that the death toll may rise with the coming days. What do you think the situation says about the response of the Indian authorities and how India has been tackling with the climate change?
Well, these are serious problems for Kerala, and the national government is very much aware of that and is trying to empower the emergency services to get in and rescue the people. The longer term implications, of course, are very severe because if farmland is damaged, it's people in the rural societies, particularly at the lower end of the socio-economic scale, who are likely to be most affected. It's never easy to be absolutely sure whether one particular flood or climatic event is caused by climate change. But what we absolutely do know from scientists is that as a result of global warming, these kind of more extreme weather events are likely to become more common, not just in India, but in other countries around the world. We're talking about things like floods and landslides and big storms and monsoons and so on. The long-term goal of the Indian government is to reduce India's dependency on thermal fuels like coal, which contribute to the CO2 emissions which we know are causing climate change. However, this is a difficult process. And at the moment, India doesn't really have enough electricity that it can generate from other sources, such as solar power and hydroelectricity, to be able to wean itself off this dirty energy. And that means, unfortunately, of course, that India is still contributing a lot of CO2 emissions, which are going to make the climate change battle much more difficult.
Duncan, thank you for joining us today. It will be interesting to see how the events unfold. And of course, all the updates will be posted on our website with Kootneeti. Don't forget to follow the Kootneeti for more updates on international relations and diplomacy.